Look, I'm a Georgia guy, but I gotta give credit where credit is due. The Tennessee Volunteers had one heck of a 2022 football season. Spearheaded by a high-voltage offense that led the entire nation in scoring, Tennessee posted a 10-win season for the first time in 15 years, beating some of their biggest rivals in the process. The Vols beat Florida for only the second time in the last 18 years. And of course, they ended a 15-year drought against Alabama with a thrilling last-second knuckleball kick win against the Crimson Tide for the first time in the Nick Saban era. But routinely dropping 50 and 60 burgers and beating some of their biggest rivals sent all of Rocky Top into orbit. And the majority of the Tennessee fan base has remained there for the entirety of the 2023 offseason. And with Georgia traveling to Neyland Stadium this season, the Tennessee faithful have been very vocal about their belief that this is the year they finally knock out the Dawgs and end another drought. Even Tennessee players have gotten in on the action. It's one thing for the Tennessee fan base and even some of their players to beat their chest, but it's an entirely different thing to go out and actually do it, because Georgia has been kryptonite to the Josh Heupel Tennessee offense.
We just stepped on their face with a hobnail boot and broke their nose. We just crushed their face.
Whether Tennessee fans want to admit it or not, the plain fact is Georgia has been kryptonite for the Josh Heupel Tennessee offense. The Dawgs have held Tennessee to its lowest yards per play output of the season each of the last two seasons, holding a 2021 Tennessee offense that averaged 6.47 yards per play to 4.6 yards per play, and limiting a 2022 Tennessee offense that averaged 7.2 yards per play to a paltry 3.9 yards per play. So how did the Dawgs do it? Let's dive in. When the average college football fan thinks of the Tennessee offense, they have visions of Hendon Hooker hooking up with Cedric Tillman and Jalen Hyatt for long, explosive touchdowns through the air. But while those explosive pass plays are what stands out, what most people fail to realize is that it is actually the run game, not the pass game, that drives Josh Heupel's Tennessee offense. Don't believe me? Well, join me in a little exercise. Visualize your conception of the Tennessee offense over the past 2 years under Josh Heupel. Now, visualize your conception of the Georgia offense over the past 2 seasons. If you're like most college football fans, for the Tennessee offense, you visualized Hendon Hooker dropping bombs and Jalen Hyatt scorching the Alabama defense for 200 plus yards. And for the Georgia offense, you probably envisioned an antiquated offense that tries to bludgeon its opponents with a physical run game. Well, what if I told you that Tennessee actually runs the ball more than Georgia? Because they do. Last season, Tennessee ran the ball on 55% of its offensive snaps. A year after, it ran the ball on 60% of its offensive snaps. Georgia, on the other hand, ran the ball on 53% of its offensive snaps last season and 57% of its snaps in 2021. It is true that the Tennessee offense is an offshoot of the old Art Briles Baylor offense that features extreme wide receiver splits and a lethal vertical passing game. But just like those old Baylor offenses, it's the run game for Tennessee that sets up those kill shots in the pass game. The extreme wide receiver splits serve to remove potential help defenders from the box. Defenders are spread out so wide defending receivers that it's very difficult for them to fit against the run. Tennessee, as Baylor once did, will take advantage of that and gash defenses with the run until eventually the opposing defense is forced to respond by rolling down extra defenders into the box to outnumber the Tennessee run game. Once that happens, that's when Tennessee has a defense right where it wants it and turns to the play-action pass game to capitalize on the advantageous one-on-one matchups in the slot and on the outside. But it's all predicated on creating those advantageous matchups on the outside with the run game. So what happens when Tennessee can't run the football? The offense sputters. It's no coincidence that in the 7 regular season games that Tennessee has lost under Josh Heupel, the Volunteers have only averaged 124 yards rushing a game. But in the 17 wins under Josh Heupel, Tennessee has averaged 230 yards rushing per game. And to my point, when Tennessee has struggled to run the football, points have been much harder to come by. In those 7 regular season games that Tennessee has lost, which are also games they struggle to run the football in, the Volunteers have averaged 24 points per game. In their 17 wins under Josh Heupel in the regular season, they've averaged 51 points per game. The message is clear. Stop the Tennessee run game, stop the Tennessee offense. And that is why Georgia has been kryptonite for the Tennessee offense. Because there's no defense in America over the past 2 seasons that have been as dominant against the run as the Georgia Bulldogs. In 2021, Georgia held Tennessee to 55 yards rushing and 1.5 yards per carry, and in the process, held Tennessee to 22 points under their season average. Last season, Georgia had the number 1 rush defense in the country and held Tennessee to 94 yards rushing, its second lowest output of the season, and in the process, held the Volunteers to 33 points below their season scoring average. So what's been the secret for the Dawgs? How have they been able to stifle the Tennessee run game and in the process, keep Josh Heupel's vaunted Tennessee offense in check? It's simple. The Dawgs have been so dominant along the defensive line and at linebacker that they have been able to effectively stop the Tennessee run game with even numbers in the box. Georgia doesn't have to roll an extra defender into the box to stop the Tennessee run game. Therefore, they don't give Tennessee the opportunity to create the advantageous matchups on the outside that they exploit. Let's go to the tape to take a closer look. And let's start with this play to illustrate why Georgia has had so much success controlling the Tennessee offense over the past 2 seasons. You can see here, when the play opens, Tennessee initially has 5 blockers in the box, 5 offensive linemen. Georgia matches that with 5 defenders in the box of its own. 3 down linemen that are in Georgia's mint front, their tight front, Okie front, same thing, whatever you want to call it, and 2 linebackers. Tennessee is then going to motion the tight end into the formation, giving them 6 blockers in the box. Now Georgia has to match that. They're going to be outnumbered. So they're going to send Javon Bullard, who has the tight end and man coverage, into the box, and now he will insert as Georgia's 6th defender in the box. Now, for most teams, most offenses, when they have even numbers against the defense in the box, that's an advantage for the offense because you have a blocker for every defender. And that's typically the case for Tennessee in almost every other game they play. But when they play Georgia, it's not the case because Georgia's so dominant up front and just so good in general in the front 6, they are able to win the vast majority of these battles with even numbers. And you'll see that here in this play. Tight end motions in, Bullard comes in as a 6th box defender. Warren Brinson blows up the right tackle, and then you've got Javon Bullard sneaking in to make the play for a short 2-yard gain. All right, let's fast forward to another play. Let's go to the 3rd quarter. You can see a very similar situation. There's no motion here, but pre-snap, Tennessee has 5 offensive linemen, 1 tight end. So they have 6 blockers in the box. What does Georgia have to match that? They have 4 down linemen or 3 down linemen, and you got a jack linebacker, and you've got 2 inside linebackers. 6 on 6 even numbers. And you'll see very similar results here. And by the way, when you watch this play, just understand there's no Jalen Carter in on this play. There's no Nazir Stackhouse in on these play. Georgia's 2 stars at defensive tackle are not even in on this play, and you're going to see they're going to stone the Tennessee offensive line. There's going to be no movement whatsoever, and they're going to shut this play down for a very, very minimal game with even numbers in the box without their 2 starting interior defensive linemen. Defensive line completely stones the offensive line. Linebackers fill, and you got a 2-yard gain. And let's take a look at one more play for good measure. Let's go to the end of the 3rd quarter. You can see a very similar setup here. You have 5 Tennessee offensive linemen, one tight end, giving Tennessee 6 blockers in the box. Georgia matches that with 6 defenders in the box of their own. Once again, this should be an advantage for Tennessee. It's an advantage for Tennessee in most other games, but not against Georgia. And in fact, you'll see in this play, Georgia dominates this play so much they blow it up from the start. It's a draw play. Georgia's going to completely blow it up on the interior. It's going to result in a fumble going into the fourth quarter. Draw action, Zion Lowe, Jalen Carter completely blow the play up, force the fumble, Terry Ingham Dawkins recovers, Georgia football. And I want to roll it back to this play one more time to actually focus on the Georgia secondary. We spent all of our time to this point focusing on the box and talking about how Georgia is able to stop Tennessee's run game with even numbers in the box. But that is just a means to an end. What that allows the Bulldogs to do is consistently play with a 2 high safety shell. You can see here in this shot right before the snap, you have one safety playing at about 12 yards and another safety playing at about 14 yards. This is going to severely restrict Tennessee's ability to create those one-on-one matchups that they are trying to manufacture and that they are able to manufacture against just about every other team they play. You can see here to the Twins receiver side, you have 2 Tennessee receivers and 3 Georgia defenders. That gives Georgia the numbers advantage on that side of the field. Go to the other side of the field. You have a single Tennessee receiver. You have 2 Georgia defenders. You have a corner and a safety to help over the top. That once again gives Georgia numbers advantage on both sides of the field. And that is going to make it extraordinarily difficult for Tennessee to create those explosive plays against Georgia that they hit routinely against everyone else they play. I'm not saying that Tennessee can't create explosive plays out of this look. It's just far more difficult for them to do it against Georgia than it is for them to do it against anyone else they play because they typically force other teams to roll one of these safeties in the box. And so they're going to have one-on-one coverage on one side of the field, and they will exploit that. Tennessee had 55 passing plays of 20 or more yards last season. Only one of those came against Georgia, and it came on the final drive of the game with 4 minutes left to play. Compare that to Alabama, who last season gave up 385 yards passing and 52 points to Tennessee. The Vols only ran for 65 yards against Alabama back in 2021, but last season they found a way to run for 182 yards, thereby giving them opportunities to create the one-on-one matchups against Alabama safeties that simply could not keep up with Jalen Hyatt and company. And you're going to be able to see it in this play. So Alabama is trying to change their play quickly. We know Tennessee goes with a hurry-up offense. Alabama's a little discombobulated. They're trying to change their play. But you're going to see Jordan Battle, Alabama's safety to the field up here at the top, is going to be trying to rotate down into the box late. And that's going to leave DeMarco Hellams rotating to the middle of the field as a single high safety. What that is going to do is create the one-on-one matchups on the outside that Tennessee covets, that they are trying to create. And Jalen Hyatt is going to just blow past Malachi Moore because, of course he does. DeMarco Hellams, as a single high safety, is not going to be able to get over the top to provide help in near enough time, and the end result is going to be a 78-yard touchdown. You're going to watch it right here. So there's Battle rotating down. You get 1-1 on the outside. Single high safety can't get over in time. Hyatt burns Malachi Moore. Boom, 78-yard touchdown pass. And this is what Tennessee could not do against Georgia because Georgia would not give them opportunities to do so because the Dogs were able to stop their run game with even numbers and never had to roll those extra defenders down into the box. Josh Heupel has undoubtedly led a resurgence in Knoxville and energized the Tennessee fan base in a way that hasn't been seen since the late 90s. They are scoring points at an unprecedented rate. They're beating rivals that have had their foot on the Vols' throat for the better part of 15 years, and they're recruiting at a solid rate. Tennessee is not going anywhere anytime soon, but the Tennessee fan base is still waiting on that Georgia win. The problem is, Georgia is built to be kryptonite to the Tennessee offense. And despite their protestations to the contrary, until the Vols can match up with the Dogs on the line of scrimmage and find a way to run the ball with some sort of consistency against that dominant Georgia defense, they're going to be waiting a long time for that Georgia win. Thanks for watching, guys. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment below, and keep coming back all season long for more great Georgia football content. And also, check out the Glory UGA podcast wherever you get your podcast for the most in-depth Georgia sports talk anywhere.
Man, is there going to be some property destroyed tonight. 26-21.